So I think that will be smoother. So let the lecture be done, because yesterday we found out that, you asked some of the points, but then they lead to a discussion, but they were actually addressed later on in the lecture. So, okay, that's the one thing. Second thing is, library, yeah. So did you do that? Library? Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to get you. I've reserved some books in the library, including our books and some of the other books that are referenced here, like these books that Mr. Davis will be talking about. So if you want to go check them out, I'm not sure if you could take them out, but I've said that for GIAN course, and I'm sending a list of all your names. So maybe you can browse through them. At the library, we have a lot of books on linguistic anthropology there. So you should go read that.
What?
We could go check it.
If you don't know where the library is, if you go
photograph
left and straight across, there's a brick building. You can see it there, or you can ask any of the students. That's all for now. Any other questions? Everything else is fine? Sure. All right.
Okay, so this lecture is on historical conceptions of mother tongue in South Asia. And primarily going to be talking about Sumati Ramaswamy's book, Passions of the Tongue. And I know some of you might already be familiar with it. So this book, it's fairly old. It was published in 1997. So as we review the book, we might think about some critiques of the book. Secondly, we might think about what its relevance is today to Tamil nationalism and devotion. But so Professor Ladusa and I were just talking about this morning. One critique of the book is that it's focused on Tamil South Asia, and it doesn't make much comparison to other languages or places in South or North India. So I think that's something we could really talk about, like what is particular about Tamil case and how to compare it to in India and South Asia. So Ramaswamy's Passions of the Tongue examines language devotion really in Tamil India from 1891 to 1970. Now the book starts with an opening vignette or a story, and it's about in 1964 in the city of Tiruchirappalli, a man named Chinnasamy walked to the region and set himself on fire. He said in Tamil, "Death to Hindi, may Tamil flourish." The next year, 5 other men burned themselves alive at the altar of Tamil. So Ramaswamy's leading question is what is it that so many men and women proclaim that they would live and die for their language? So this is her primary research question. Now, she situates her book in terms of the literature on linguistic nationalism. So she says that other works argue that Tamil nationalism is another instance of linguistic nationalism, and that linguistic nationalism is a model that originated in Europe. Right, so we assume that Tamil nationalism is a distorted variant of something that has already happened elsewhere, but reenacted with local content. So they say that it's just derivative of something that ultimately originated in Europe. So of course, Ramaswamy is arguing against this view, right? So Ramaswamy argued that there's so much scholarship on nationalism that the term is overburdened. There's too much weight on this term. And she argues that nationalism don't work the same everywhere. And this is especially true when it comes to nationalism and linguistic identity. So she said nationalism is not everywhere predicated on linguistic passions, nor does language loyalty necessarily or always induce a singular nation state. And she gives some example of this. She talks about the Swiss. So they have linguistic nationalism, but it's not tied to a nation state in Switzerland, because in Switzerland, official languages are German, French, Italian, and Romanish. So it's not a universal, according to Ramaswamy, that nationalism is tied to language. And it doesn't always induce a singular nation state. So she proposes a new analytic to theorize discourses of love, labor, and life that has coalesced around Tamil in this century. She said these discourses can only partially contain within the meta-narrative of nationalism, right? So what's occurring in Tamil Nadu only partially makes sense in terms of our general idea of nationalism. So because of that, you need a new analytic, you need a new way of describing it that's distinct to this context, because it's not derivative of nationalism in Europe. So the new analytic is Tamil devotion. And she takes this term, she uses this expression from Tamil terms. So this comes from the Tamil language, this term, Tamil devotion. So it's not an English Western category, right? So the book overall looks at how language has been transformed into an object of devotion and the course of the social mobilization and political empowerment of its speakers. She also looks at how language devotion produces a modern Tamil subject. So the book really covers two main historical political events that occurred in South India. So the first is the non-Brahmin movement in the early 20th century. So just in general, the non-Brahmin movement was in opposition to caste-based discrimination and hierarchical social order that placed Brahmins at the top of the social order. So Brahmanism was organized at the formation of the Justice Party in late 1960 Madras presidency. And the party was composed of non-Brahmins and was committed to enhancing the opportunities for non-Brahmins. And then the other political event covered in the book, or the historically relevant political movement, was the Dravidian movement in the mid 20th century. So the Dravidian movement was popularized in the 1930s and 1950s by a series of small organizations that argued that South Indians formed a racial and cultural entity that was different from North Indians. They also claimed that Brahmins and other upper castes were originally Aryan migrants from the north, and that they imposed their language, Sanskrit, religion, and heritage on the southern people. And of course, the Dravidian movement was led by E.V. Ramaswamy. and demanded an independent Dravidian state that included all 4 Dravidian-speaking states of South India. Now, the book makes a lot of really significant contributions to understanding of mother tongue. So a lot of works treat mother tongue as something a person possesses or owns. But yesterday in our discussion, we were really problematizing the concept and talking about how it doesn't really fit people's actual sociolinguistic situations. But actually, a lot of academic scholarship sort of just assumes that people have a mother tongue and that's a natural thing. But then you have a body of scholarship in sociolinguistics and linguistic anthropology in South Asia and the US that analyzes it as an ideologically mediated concept. And because it's an ideology, of course, it's variable, it's multiple, and as we learned yesterday, it's politically and morally driven. I mean, how could it not be? So Ramaswamy work really contributes a lot to understanding of mother tongue because she's showing how for Tamil India, she looks at how it was variously imagined by different individuals and groups over time, right? How mother tongue was imagined varied historically, and it varied for different social groups. And very few scholars have done this in the work, right? Another work to look at is the Mitchell's 2009 book that looks at variable imagines of mother tongue for Telugu speakers during roughly the same historical period. And she cites Ramaswamy a lot. It was written after Ramaswamy's book.
Both are on reserve in the library.
And Ramaswamy's book is really beautifully written. It's another thing, it's very clearly written. So then she talks about the history of mother tongues and mothers in Tamil Nadu. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday. She talks about how the concept goes back to Europe, but only gained salience in the 1850s. But she says it's so salient that today in the modern period, Tamil speakers use the term mother tongue to refer to their own language. And of course, we learned Thai, Mori, we talked about it yesterday, how it's also used in Kerala as well. So how about mothers and mother tongues? She writes that Tamil devotees struggle to gain official recognition for their language as a mother tongue. Ramaswamy questions why the figure of a mother was so central to Tamil devotion, right? So the language, of course, it was nationalism of all language, but why was a mother in particular so central to it? So she asks, why does the new people-centered ideology of language and the patrimonial imagination ushered in with modernity resort to the figure of the mother? Why did the mother historically become so central for Tamil devotion in Tamil India? And of course, it's not a universal, it's something historically contingent and resulting from specific historical processes. So of a lot of the book, she talks about Mother Tamil, the goddess. So she writes about for Dravidian nationalists in South India in the mid-20th century, the goddess Tamartai, Mother Tamil, became a focal sign for rallying the Tamil people against imperialism from abroad and from North India. And actually, this quote is from Barney Bate, who also, some of you might be familiar with his scholarship. He wrote a lot about Dravidian nationalism through books, this topic. And she writes, and Swami writes, that in discourses of Tamil devotees, there were slippages between Tamil, Tamil Thai, Mother Tamil, Thai Paul, Mother's Milk, Thai Mother, Thai Morty, Mother Tongue. So these are just terms like sort of coalesced into one another. So one of Ramaswamy's main arguments is that Mother Tamil herself, goddess, was of subversive figure. She went against mainstream nationalist narratives. She argues that Mother Tamil is a singular figure with her own biography, but then at the same time, she joins a pantheon of similar female icons of the nation, including Mother India. So that's we could talk about is the relationship between the two. But she's subversive because she cannot be easily assimilated into a ready-made narrative of language and nationalism founded around the concept of mother tongue. So Ramaswamy argues that from the late 19th to the late 20th centuries, the Tamil language and its speakers were conceived as inextricably intertwined in a way that never been before in the land in which language had been spoken for at least 2,000 years. So I think in the modern day, it's sort of taken for granted that the Tamil language and its speakers can't separate them. But this wasn't always that way. This was introduced in this period from the late 1980s. She argues that Tamil devotees use Tamil Thai strategically to draw the attention of Tamil speakers to the plight of their language. And she says that Tamil language was equated with a mother to the extent that their mothers and their language were foundational to the very imagining of Tamils and community as a community. So essential to Tamils being a community was this equation with Tamil language, Tamil speakers, and mothers. So what I think really central part of the book is that she looks at different imaginings of mother tongue that occurred in Tamil speaking India during this period. So she writes about how some people began to integrate mother tongue with the nation. So in doing this, they saw Tamil as part of a larger family of mother tongues in India, right? So Tamil was a mother tongue in the same way that Telugu was, in the same way that Malayalam was, and that they all had a relationship to the Indian nation. So they are equivalent to each other. So many people started to accept this narrative. So like Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Hindi, Bengali, they were all part of this family that was part of the Indian nation. Others, however, stressed its exceptionalism, right? That Tamil was exceptional to other languages as a one and only mother tongue to which its speakers owe total and unconditional allegiance, the language of their Tamil nation. So they're saying Tamil isn't equivalent to other languages in its relationship to the nation. They're arguing that exceptional. The Tamil context is exceptional to other cases. It's unique. It has its own history. It's not commensurate or relatable. And the figure of Mother Tamil ties into this too, because Mother Tamil has her own biography. She's not a version of Mother India. She's specific to the Tamil context. So what's really unique about this book is it's showing the relationship of Tamil devotion to what was happening in other places in India at the time, but then again, it's still saying what was exceptional and different about it. And of course, the bigger contextualizing argument that I at the beginning is that Tamil devotion is not just some copy of a European linguistic nationalism. And I think that's a really big, important part of the argument and a contribution of the book. So I think now we can move on to a discussion. You guys can make comments and questions. Some things that you might want to think about in the discussion is how is mother tongue differently imagined in different regions of India? I mean, so we have this great historical work on Tamil devotion in Tamil Nadu. We have Lisa Mitchell's book on Telugu devotion. But there aren't many other in-depth historical studies. Of course, there are some books and articles relevant to it, but there haven't really been in-depth books on these subjects in other states and regions and places within India. Secondly, is nationalism always tied to devotion? Ramaswamy says, but how would we answer this question within an Indian context, right? Another question to think about is nationalism tied to language standardization invariably. And that's something we talked about a little bit yesterday was standardization process is important to a language seeking recognition at the level of like the state or the nation, right? So nationalism always invariably tied to some kind of standardization process. So this is the mic we've been using. Oh, is it on? Hey, does anyone have a question or a comment or? Oh, it's not on.
So I have a question, like how do we see the?
Not on.
Also, it helps if
I mean, you could turn it on higher if that's possible. I think some people on the front yesterday weren't hearing the backs. Which would, yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask. So for the first question, how mother tongue differently imagined in different regions of India. So I would like to take the reference from Tamil Nadu as well as Telangana, I mean Andhra Pradesh. So in context of Tamil Nadu, there is this inter-language issue, like Tamil versus
Hello.
So in Sumati Ramaswamy's case, so it's Tamil versus Telugu. Unlike that, in the context of Lisa Mitchell's work,
In where?
Lisa Mitchell's work, Telugu. when
Lisa
she was-
Mitchell's
yeah.
work, right?
So I would like to connect Lisa Mitchell's work with the latest work that is coming up in Telangana. So in case of Tamil Nadu, in Ramaswamy's book, she discusses inter-language context, that is Tamil versus Telugu. Unlike that, in Andhra Pradesh case, like Lisa Mitchell's work, there I see intra-language. So within Telugu, there is this division. So the nationalism is actually connected with the state identity. That is what I am connecting there, like how linguistic nationalism is related to inter-language and intra-language. This is one point I got from this first question. And from second question, how language is like how nationalism always tied to language devotion. Yes. So though people say Telugu is same, but there is this clear distinction how Telugu and Andhra Telugu and Telangana Telugu have different language influences. For example, in Andhra region, there is this Sanskrit influence. Language has got Sanskrit influence. Unlike that, Telangana has got Dakhini Urdu and Persian influence. So these two languages have different influences from Indo-Aryan languages. This is one of the observation I had. And how the nationalism is tied to standardization, absolutely. So before 1960, the region, Hyderabad region, was having Urdu as a standard language. Everywhere in the public domain, administrative, school curriculum, everywhere it's Urdu only. But as soon as the state has formed in 1960s, then they demolished all Urdu places. Nowhere Urdu is there in print media and electronic media, the school curriculum. Only madrasas were open for Urdu medium school instructions. So this is one of the observation I had. And now in Telangana, what is happening? Like, so I see in Hyderabad region, one is Urdu before 1960. After 1960, it's Andhra Telugu, which was influenced by Sanskrit. Now Telangana Telugu is getting enhanced through media, cinema, and in all other platforms. So recently, even in education also, they are bringing up with new good textbooks, which is having Telangana lexicon.
So you're
So-
saying it's getting less Sanskritized?
Yes.
With the influence of media?
Media, but state identity has that power to establish their own identity, because once AP was formed, AP government made this rule, give let's take away Urdu from this context and bring in this Andhra language, which is influenced by Sanskrit. But now once the Telangana is formed, now they are again taking out Andhra Telugu and bringing up with Telangana Telugu, which is Urdu influenced. So this is what my observation is from for all these questions.
And what is Urdu influence there?
Huh?
What you said, Urdu influence, what is Urdu influence?
Urdu
there?
influence means whatever Telugu language is having. So we like my research is about three generations. Three generations. That's what Lisa Mitchell also talks about. Like a person from Hyderabad, if they are from there in that region from 1960s. So three generations witnessed state identity in three different ways. It was Hyderabad, it was Andhra Pradesh, it is Telangana now. So three different identities and three different generations associate themselves with three different identities. So if I ask my grandfather, which like if he is 70, 80, he'll say, I am a Hyderabadi. He will not say I'm a Telangana person and an AP person.
Oh, wow.
My parents will say they are AP. They don't say I'm Telangana person. But if I ask the younger ones who are like school children now, they'll say they are Telangana. So the state identity has changed their attitudes towards their language. So that is one of my observations throughout my project.
I do have the similar kind of experience to share. Before 96, my state means Odisha was part of Bihar and Bengal. Then after 1936, on the basis of linguistic, it has become a special province. Same things, it will happen with us also. Before 1936, the Bengal peoples, I don't want to blame anyone. It was like that, they were saying that Odia ek swatantra bhasha no hai. Something kind of was there, and it was hurt to the Odia people's emotions. And after that, whatever literary sources were there, when we talk about a language identity, we talk about different literary sources, what it is available for them, or we talk about different script, whatever available for them. So all together, some of the nationalists of Odisha province, they gathered together, and April 1st, 1936, Odisha became a special province or special state on the basis of linguistics. Then after that, we had our own script, we had our own language, and accordingly, so this is the way how Odisha people has come up with a state on the basis of language. So definitely it promotes nationalism and a state identity as well.
Wow, really fascinating.
So when we are talking about this idea of a mother tongue and how nationalism or whether they are even linked,
Yeah.
I think there's a very significant difference in the way Tamil speakers approach this and the other language speakers. Like there is this idea of Tamil nationalism. But when it comes to other language, it's like an affinity or devotion to their language, but also somewhere an unsaid notion that they are a part of the larger subset of India. I think it's a very notable difference that we could discuss about. Just a remark I wanted to make.
What was the last thing you said? What about the difference?
As in, I think they have very different approach towards this idea of devotion towards their language. They wouldn't call it nationalism per se when it comes to their language.
For Tamil context.
No, for the non-Tamil context.
Non-Tamil context.
Like,
so
you
you're
wouldn't-
saying that Tamil context is quite distinct, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
And also discussing about this idea of mother tongue in context of Kannada, it's interesting that the idea of mother Kannada or the mother of Karnataka is attributed to like there were kingdoms in the older times who had their presiding deity whom they would worship before or like for celebrations. So there was this, there were two kingdoms, one of Kadambas and the other of Vijayanagar Empire, who had Bhuvaneshwari as their main goddess. So the same goddess is today treated as Mother Kannada. So it also, in that case, I'm aware that it's a historical idea, but the place is contested because there are two Bhuvaneshwari temples. So people are fighting that which is the real one.
Okay.
But they agree that it is Bhuvaneshwari who is the Kannada mother, and she has been historically presiding over Karnataka for more than 300 years.
Wow. And there was a. Here, I can give you this one.
Hello. Yeah. So I would like to comment on the first question, which is how is the mother tongue differently imagined in different regions of India? So because I am coming from the North Indian, from the North India. So I would like to quote here the example. Quote Rizwan Ahmad here. He has talked in his paper Unpacking Indexicality, in which he mentions that in the pre-colonial India, or the generation that has been born in the pre-colonial India or in the colonial India, they have not distinguished their language, their mother tongue, as from Hindi and Urdu. They have always acknowledged that it's the same. Meanwhile, in the post-colonial, post-independent India, the case has been reversed, and the new generation is saying that, oh, our mother tongue is Hindi. So also commenting on the contemporary domination of Hindi in the northern part of India and also in the southern part vis-a-vis. So the language dominance is now being synonymously used with the nationalism, like the imagination of the Hindu Rashtra, which Rizwan Ahmad also quotes that because in after the when India got independence and the nations were divided, and there was Pakistan who was solely made on the base of religion, and Urdu became their national language. That makes India the language of Hindi, and that's how Hindi is being associated with nationalism nowadays.
I have a quick question here. So, do we see any diglossia situation in this kind of context, like when we have two different languages or same language, let's say in context of Telugu? So earlier there is this diglossia situation when AP was there, like, okay, Telangana Telugu is a low level or non-standard language and Andhra Telugu is a standard language. So is there any chance that after state forming, is there any chance that non-standard language becoming a standard language by any means?
Like, what do you mean by non-standard language?
So non-standard in the sense, I feel that language and state identity are like interrelated, at least after linguistic
Linguistic reorganization of states.
after that. So now state identity is related with language identity. That is what linguistic organization did. So reorganization did. So my question is that in 1960s, from 1960 to 2014, it is AP, Andhra Pradesh. And Andhra Telugu is the dominant language or standard language, which is used in media, education sector. So formal
Andhra
domains.
Telugu is standardized form. Okay.
But that time Telangana Telugu was inferiorized, or people doesn't like to talk in the public domain. They switch their language intentionally and adopt some markers which show that that's not a Telangana Telugu. So for example, honorific markers are such that they show that they are not from Telangana. So during that time, I feel there's a diglossia situation. Like people feel that, okay, if you speak in Andhra Telugu, that means it's a standard variety. And if you speak in Telangana Telugu, that's a non-standard variety.
Right. So in the home, you could speak in the
Yes.
non-standard
Yes,
variety, but in
yes.
schools or the context,
Yes.
you use the standard. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like glossic
Yes.
ideology.
Huh. Now
Right.
state has changed. State identity has got changed.
Okay.
Now I'm feeling that there's a high chance that now Telangana Telugu will become a standard variety in next 20 years. I mean, it will become
Because of the changing state
change in
identity.
state identity, and they are doing from like starting from media, because cinema industry is one of the biggest industry in southern region. So they are starting from there, and even in education sector. So is there any chance, or in your research, like in your experience, did you encounter any kind of such situations when there is state identity versus language identity becoming standard language after the state identity is formed?
So I haven't done research in Tamil Nadu for a long time. So
Okay.
I think you might be more qualified to answer this question But I think what we're telling about sort of legitimating of this non-standard language according to a political shift, that's incredibly interesting. I think you should write an article on that. But do you want to comment on this or you? Yeah, okay.
Larusa was talking about
Oh.
Bodia's idea of condescension.
Yes.
How Lalu Prasad Yadav was talking, using the non-standardized form of English.
Yes.
Yeah, that could be an example.
Now politicians in Telangana, due to upcoming elections, they are actually changing their language. So earlier, these people used to talk in proper Andhra Telugu. With
Yeah.
I think it has to do with changing
So
power dynamics.
it seems from what you're saying, it's very clear that this variety that was considered non-standard before is becoming standardized, it's becoming legitimized. If it's used in the film industry, current politicians, I think this is definitely yes in this context. But I'm not sure if there's exact parallel in the Tamil context. I don't think so. But
There's definitely not an exact parallel to this, but in terms of the variety of language in Tamil Nadu, there are instances where there are these different ways. I mean, I'm sorry to call it dialects within the Tamil language, fight with each other, and different like these dialects become prominent in different contexts within the same groups of people.
yes.
So, for example, in central Tamil Nadu, the dialect is very different from north and the south, and you would find that the way of speaking Tamil, which is found to be very local and colloquial and very casual, is being employed by people from all over Tamil Nadu, whether central or south, in contexts that are casual and friendly and informal. And then different kind of way of talking in Tamil is employed while talking to people in a formal setting or people or to people who they meet for the first time. There's also the case of the Brahmin Tamil in Tamil Nadu, which is like not exactly a dialect. It's a very distinct. So certain words are extremely different from they're basically the Sanskritized Tamil, and it's only spoken by Brahmins. And the Dravidian movement did also kind of protest against that. And in today's context, friends who are Brahmin speak that my friends who are Brahmin speak that dialect in their households, but when they come to school and have relationships or friendships with people who don't speak that dialect will speak normal Tamil. But in formal occasions where they're talking to a superior or an authority figure, they switch to that Tamil as if to it's very unconscious, and it's almost to like establish that, oh, I am by the way, I am Brahmin. And I think that's a very unconscious thing that a lot of people do. And now in the modern context, with the memes and cinema, there is this kind of mockery done in comedy, whether in stand-up comedy or in cinema or even between friends, and memes that mocks this Brahmin Tamil. And when people like who are not Brahmins and who don't speak that dialect want to poke fun of them or just want to appear funny, they quickly speak that Tamil.
I've seen it in films. They make fun of it in films.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It actually happens so casually, and it's not taken offense to.
And I heard there's a television show in Tamil Nadu where they have people speaking different Tamil dialects, and they even like translate it. They had a Jaffna person, and they were translating it to like standard Tamil. They like translate Tamil to Tamil.
Oh, okay, I didn't know about
Oh,
that.
okay.
But most of the times, the
Yeah.
dialects are cognizable for everyone who doesn't speak the dialect. It's very similar. It's just the delivery is different. That's all. The tonality and the delivery is different. It's not exactly that the words are very different.
But it seems like there's a great interest in this linguistic difference.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's being heavily represented in media.
Absolutely, yeah. And
I think you're talking about similar diglossic elements because you're saying that people will use a very casual Tamil and like with friends and.
Thanks for the explanation. I mean, it's pretty interesting with that. I would like to ask you, is it a, like you're saying unconscious, like they switch unconsciously, but do you think that is it because of the social acceptance they need in the society? Because, for example, when you say Brahmin friends want to talk to non-Brahmin friends, they switch because of the social acceptance from the friends, and when they go to formal domains, or when they talk to higher rank authorities, they switch again back to Brahmin because of the Brahmin Tamil, because of the social acceptance. Is that so? So actually, I have an observation here. So is it the same case with non-Brahmins? Do they also switch to, let's say, a formal Tamil, or let's say Brahmin Tamil, when they speak to higher rank authorities? No. Okay, I just want to draw parallels from my observation. So in Telangana and Andhra region, let's imagine a person from Telangana, he switches to Telangana Telugu when he's talked to Telangana people. But when he get to know that, he gets to know that there's somebody from Tamil Andhra region, he switches his language because of the social acceptance. That is one. But it is not the case with Andhra people, because they cannot talk Telangana. They cannot talk Telangana. Why? Telangana people were expected to change their language from Telangana Telugu to Andhra Telugu, but not vice versa. So I'm just drawing parallels like how you see Brahmin, but it's pretty interesting that how a caste is relating to language. It's very unusual in other contexts. Like in case of Telugu, there's no caste way, but class, we see class, like how class shifts their language to formal Telugu or more Sanskritized Telugu. So yeah, it's a pretty good observation. Perhaps I might quote this observation sometime in my research. Thanks.
I'm going to try and address all three questions in the context of Rajasthan, according to my observations. So what's happening there right now is an effort, exaggerated effort towards standardizing Rajasthani as a language, because in Rajasthan, there are a lot of dialects, right? And Rajasthani as a language, historically, there was this scholar, his name was George Abraham Greeson, who basically used this term for the first time, Rajasthani, to basically combine or collectively name all of the dialects that are spoken in the region of Rajasthan. So, for example, there is another scholar here who said that her mother tongue is Shekhawati. I would also say that my mother tongue is Shekhawati, because what do you mean when you say that your mother tongue is Rajasthani? Is there a language that is called Rajasthani? If we talk about, let's say a scholar from America wants to come and study Rajasthani, can he go to any university? Is there a course in Rajasthani right now? So there is a lacuna there, which is being tried and filled by like organizations that are private or under trusts. So you can do courses in Rajasthani, which are now being standardized because they feel that there is a need for that. Now people have cultural, political, as well as other reasons to try and standardize Rajasthani. They are putting a lot of pressure on the state government because elections are close. So the CM is being pressured into try and getting because it's not one of the recognized languages in India right now. So there is a lot of movement towards making it politically acceptable in that sense, so that people can actually say that my mother tongue is Rajasthani, because there are millions of people in India right now who speak this language and they want that recognition. So I think historically also, if we talk about colonial India, we did this paper by Veena Narangal, which talks about colonial bilingualism. And it talks about how newspaper outlets in both regional as well as in English language in colonial times were a way for people to not only establish their vernacular identities so as to challenge the hegemony of the English language, but also helped a lot of states formulate this identity that is closely related with the language, right? So I think because nationalism, we can say, is related to language devotion, it automatically also becomes linked with standardization as well, because that question of standardization also comes in when you basically try to, even then there was a question of which, like if the majority of the dialect, if there are any rules that it follows, that is begin to put into print media, because English as a way to claim that hegemony, the the argument was that because there are books printed in English, there's a lot of literature that's available in English, and this happened around in the 15th century. It's termed as print capitalism by Benedict Anderson. So that sort of an infrastructure was not available in India to colonial power. So what they tried to do was make it a project of education, that okay, English should be put into the curriculum and people should be taught it, so as it becomes not only the language of official things, but as a better language that vernaculars will always be inferior to. So a lot of people, a lot of intellectuals in the vernacular sphere tried to basically challenge that through print media and newspapers.
Coming to the first point here, I think in context of Hindi, I think how it is way different from Tamil in terms of how old Hindi is. Let's first take that into consideration. Hindi as we know it now is barely a 120 or 130 years old language, because in 1900s when Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi started publishing Saraswati, it was a conscious exercise to make Hindi look a certain way. It was heavily Sanskritized, it was heavily standardized, it was made to look, he was a grammar Nazi in all senses of the word. So before that, Hindi had a very, Hindi was Hindustani initially in the 1850s and the 1870s, up until Bhattindu Harishchandra was writing. Then they slowly progressed towards Khadi Boli, and then it became how we know of Hindi as in the official domains. So Hindi again is, Tamil is one of the oldest languages that there are. So it has a very, that's why Hindi feels the sense of, it has to run back to Sanskrit every now and then. So it goes back to the mother, oh, where are you? Come to my rescue. So that's what keeps happening with Hindi. But again, it is also very interesting how during the national movement, it was used as a conscious tool to unite people in the, again, then you had a greater common enemy. So you were like, okay, now we have to unite people. So people who were not predominantly from the Hindi speaking state, the national leaders, like Mahatma Gandhi himself, he's like, no, we need one language and people need to come together. So language was also used as a confidence building exercise, that we have something of our own, which is sufficient enough to have a national identity of our own. So I think, but then again, the political context was so different than what we have now. And once the biggest enemy is eliminated, then you have smaller enemies. And that's how nationalism is the feeling of belongingness you feel on the basis of something. It can be language, it can be a geographical region, it can be any identity. So at that time, maybe the linguistic identity of every individual was not so important as to gain independence from this like outsiders. So in that way, Hindi is way newer, but it's also very fascinating how it is imposed on so many people as their mother tongue, and they blindly accept that, yes, Hindi is my mother tongue. So that way, yes, it is a product of nationalism, but also very, very influential one. And then how is nationalism tied to language devotion? In this case, it was not particularly language devotion per se, but language was used as a tool, and it was a very efficient tool. It's sad how Hindi is subpar again to English, and we have barely any higher education access in Hindi now. I did my undergrad in Hindi, and then I had to make a switch to look at this because I looked at the sorry state of affairs that Hindi is. I love the language. I could not live with the torment anymore. So it's a sorry, like how there's no academic rigor left, how people are treating it, and it's a bleak future. Then again, for this nationalism cause, we don't have Britishers tormenting us anymore. We have our own people for it. So I think now we have different and I think interesting reasons to form our own nationalistic identities, to be able to fight for it, to want to lit ourselves to fire and die for it. And I think it's as interesting, but yeah, nationalism gets tied to standardization also and language devotion also.
So again, about the question of how mother tongue is differently imagined in regions of India, I wanted to share that in many indigenous groups in northeastern India, what I have noticed is that it's not the verbatim translation of the words mother tongue. For example, in Paite, language spoken by the Paite group in Manipur and Mizoram mostly, something which comes close to the word mother tongue is apao, which means us, or like a means us and pau means language. They are referring to our language. So here again, it's the case of identity, the case of social identity, and also the case of bringing unity among the people, that this is our language. And yeah, that is one point that I wanted to add.
Just adding to what this both spoke, nationalism is a lot about mobilization at times. How do I mobilize people for a specific cause? And when we look at mother tongue, the word itself, mother, now we were reading, mother tongue is something we can possess. What better way to mobilize people than a female figure whom you need to protect and also possess, and also something which you own? And it also places the primary caretaking responsibilities of that to a mother. When you say mother tongue, it is something I got from my mother. My mother has taken care of me. So there is a lot of societal discourse and narrative that comes into it. And when we are talking about nationalism, a very important tool of propagating is definitely the mother tongue. Speaking on my region, which is Western Odisha, I am also from Odisha, but we don't speak the same variety as Odia. And for years now, we have been but a lot of people have been asking for a different state based on a lot of research. I think that stems because of facilities regarding legal issues where we don't get representation in Odia high courts at all. One. And second, to the facilities, because a lot of districts in Western Odisha are regarded as backward districts, one of the poorest in India, which is why when you get into higher institution, you get 2 extra points while applying if you are from KBK areas. So that is the thing, that when Odisha has even though come a long way, we still do not have enough facilities or legal representation. Somehow it has now tied into language as an identity, and the mission of a state is being pushed forward, that we do not have legal representation, we do not have facilities. But what better to drive that movement than a language? To bring that all together, maybe you don't speak the standard variety of Odia, and that is why you're not getting these facilities. So yeah, definitely nationalism, to propagate nationalism, language is one of the major tools that is being used. So that's.
Just a quick comment on the conversation that we have been having so far. I think that the idea of standardization within Hindi is mostly restricted to the political front. Like the common man who is the stakeholder of the Hindi language, so to speak, really doesn't care about standardization as much, right? So if you see the entire Indo-Gangetic plain, you would never really have a consensus as to what Hindi actually is. Right, so if it's like a Bhojpuri Hindi or a Awadhi Hindi, it is Hindi for them, right? There is you won't say which Hindi is it going to be, or whose Hindi is it anyway that becomes the national language, right? So that's what I had. So the standardization project, do we really care about it as common people or as speakers of the language? Not really. Do the politicians do? Maybe. So yeah, so maybe we can question that as well, right? Thanks.
I mean, just to counter your point just a little bit, I feel like, I mean, common people, I don't think consciously have a stake in whether Hindi is a standardized language or not. But whenever there is a conversation, which is very frequent, when a non-Hindi speaker goes somewhere where there's Hindi is a majority language, I think the conversation is already always driven not that, oh, you're in my state, so you speak my language, but rather that, oh, Hindi is the national language and everyone should know. And the thing is that the constitution, it is not so. It is not the national language, but it was considered as the official language of the country immediately after independence, temporarily, which was never after that altered. So I think this argument where you are demanded to speak in Hindi because it is identified in the North as the national language is something it's a sudden justification and a strong sentiment that occurs when one refuses or doesn't know how to speak Hindi. I also think that in terms of standardization and its association with nationalism, I think Indian nationalism, while countering colonialism, oftentimes, um, this is something I was taught and I also read about, is that nationalism has often been very antithetical to colonialism, is to not necessarily construct an identity that is very unique to India, but rather to counter every accusation that the colonials made about India being backward, about them being cruel to the women. And therefore, that is when sati became a concern, not until then. That's when women's education became a concern, not until then. And I think having Hindi as the common language of the country would have been such an antithetical, English versus Hindi, rather than a conscious effort to really understand the multilingual problem of the country.
Maybe this could be the last comment.
So up till now, mostly we have been talking about languages which are actually bounded by a region. Like most of the languages that you guys talked about have a defined region and have a defined population, which, they have a specific place where they live in. So try to imagine a language which doesn't have any, regional boundaries, which once was a supra-regional language, an urban language, now, like relegated to almost nothing, just a popular language for poetry. I'm talking in the sense of Urdu. It doesn't have any state anymore. And most of its population is gone somewhere else. Once it was a supra-regional language. I mean, it was the language of the urban people. And I would like to I won't quote her, but yeah, Aisha Kedwai once talked about like the different registers, like, Hindustani, like Khari Boli, and also that, like, she says that Hindi or like Urdu or like, like Khari Boli and all these dialects, they are just different registers. And among that, like Urdu, like back then it was the language of like urban, metropolis and all, like where people who were engaged in like state affairs and all, they used to use that language. And while Hindi was the rural language back then. But then you see after partition and all, and when like most of the migration, like, yeah, of course it was region based, but there was religion based, like India and Pakistan, but it was language based also, because the whole Hindi nationalist movement of like, mid 19th century and all, it all started from there. Fort Williams College, they produced the first work in like pure Hindi or pure Urdu. That was the first bifurcation back then. So I'm just asking a question: how does a person who says that his mother tongue is Urdu has a devotion, like how can he even show a devotion for a language which is already dead, which can't even give him anything? There is no political incentive, there is no economic incentive, you don't even have your own state to call to, you don't have a region to call to. How does devotion work there? How does standardization work there? All of the languages that we talked about have a region, like Urdu doesn't. And now it's just like it's a popular language. Oh, it's alive. We have Jashne Rekhta. We have actors talking in Urdu, and like, it's all crap. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, I think that's a question we should continue to think about in the course. I think it's an important question. So we'll certainly address that.
Across the country who identify Urdu as their mother tongue is still high, despite across the whole country. So people in Hyderabad and people in
recognition for Dakhini as a language, and they don't want to be called Urdu speakers.
So that's true, but still, if you just look at people
Yeah.
identifying, yeah, maybe some people will say like, oh, we think that-
It's yeah.
Yeah, so this question of even what is Urdu? Because some things is also a big question, right? And people, you know, and it's not the same.
And so the language that came out of it, for example, Gujri here, it was one of the results of the interaction between the Sufis and the locals. Dakhini, the same. You see all of the old works there in Urdu is the same interaction between the Persian and the yeah.
There was no such thing like Urdu.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Yet, still, now, present period, many lacks
The lacks of speakers are there. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I'll give you an example of Uttar Pradesh. So
Nobody discussed about Malayalam here, so I have some rudimentary or kind of crude questions. So in Kerala, we cannot see kind of explicit politics based on Malayalam. And still everybody knows that the standard version of Malayalam is kind of Nair version, Nair dominant kind of Malayalam. Still it is not explicitly political or being politicized. So I'm thinking about the role of Communist Party and the shift they brought in the priorities have affected. Because we can see in the Communist Party, most of the leaders were from the upper caste community, and they mobilized lots of people. And this Nair version of Malayalam got standardized in a way that many people are not critical or explicitly political about this version. But now in the new movies and all these kinds of things, a new trend is emerging to kind of register their own kind of local dialects or versions or varieties. And this may lead, even though in Kerala, we do not think much about this linguistic kind of politics or nationalism, it may arise in the future.
I think we need to stop now because we're already past the time. You guys want to take? You can take like a 2-minute break.
I think this question of region will get adjusted. So
Yeah. So we'll also talk about region.
Yeah, teachers.
I would love.
Okay.
Let me just make sure that